going on, everybody? It's Geoff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, joined as I am every Monday at 2 o'clock with Sean Reider, the primary, college football writer for the Albuquerque Journal, Lobo football beat writer. I primarily do Lobo basketball and college basketball stuff, but we also join in the weekly pleasures of talking to you, the readers, viewers, listeners, whatever this medium is at this point. About Lobo, the world of Lobo sports and Lobo athletics, and primarily it's been Lobo football much of the way. I can touch on some Lobo basketball today, but primarily we're going to be talking Lobo football. Bronco Mendenhall had his weekly press conference at noon earlier today. We will talk with Sean about that. We will recap what was we can couch it with who it was against and struggling this, blah, blah, blah. They're still under 500, or you could just look at it for the first time in a really long time as a really huge win for Lobo football and a whole lot of excitement and genuine, just sort of happy feelings around the program. And then they got to do it again. You celebrate that for a little bit, turn around, beat Utah State in the fashion you did, and everyone feels good. But now you got to turn around and figure out how to do it as a full touchdown underdog at Colorado State this week. A Colorado State team who for the past decade has been as bad as UNM, but for the past decade has owned UNM. Their struggles have been against everybody else and not UNM. So we'll see if that changes this week. And some quick news, Donovan, there I go. Devin Dampier, not Donovan Dent, the basketball player. We are starting basketball soon. Devin Dampier named today Mountain West Offensive Player of the Week. As I put out on social media, and I'm willing to say, and kind of have been hinting at from, my place from afar where I'm not actually covering the team like Sean is, and I can make these easy kind of hot take statements. But I think he is the best quarterback in the Mountain West Conference. And I've thought that for a few weeks now, and he gets his first weekly honor. So there's the setup. There's the long-winded setup for all of this. Sean, how you doing?
Jeff, I am primarily thankful to be on the show today. Thank you for having me on.
I'm glad you're primarily thankful. Primarily, Sean, we are at a spot in the season where normally Lobo football and Lobo basketball crossing over usually means it's Lobo basketball time. There's still obvious excitement about Lobo basketball in this town, and there always will be, and that's what makes Lobo basketball such a great product and just a great will survive conference realignment kind of entity. But for the first time in a while, we're 7 games into a football season, and there's still bowl hopes. There's still bowl eligibility hopes. There is still excitement about this team. I still don't know that I will go as far as to say I think they get 3 more wins, but there's certainly 3 more wins on the table. There's certainly 3 more games that they can win. There's more than 3 games that they can win. So do you want to start with kind of recapping a little bit of the press conference, recapping a little bit more from the game on Saturday for anybody who wants to go over that, or do you want to start spinning forward?
Let's talk about the press conference a little bit today too. After what we saw from Bronco Mendenhall on Saturday, visibly emotional, tears freshly wiped from his cheeks, one tear streaming down during one question I asked him. Do you think that anything changed in terms of how he approached his Monday press conference after all that? 3 straight wins, the whole 9 yards.
I'm guessing not, but that's because I don't think he's changed a whole lot all season. But I say that I hadn't seen him cry. So, I mean, there was some new on Saturday. So I'm guessing he didn't change a whole lot. But what happened? Anything interesting?
Not one bit. Exact same Monday press conference kind of deal. Exact same tone, exact same demeanor. In terms of, talking about the win on Saturday, the 3-game winning streak, which he's not really paying attention to, the lack of success against Colorado State, which he is also not paying attention to, and Colorado State's personnel and some things that they do well and some things that they've done. They're doing a little bit differently from this year compared to previous years. One of the questions, one thing that kind of piqued my interest was that in terms of him looking at Colorado State, and I think this is how with the tape that we kind of have on Colorado State, how everybody's sort of looking at it right now. Obviously Colorado State, a lot of the branding and what Matt Mummy and Jay Norvell and all that, that stuff has been built up there around the idea that we're an air raid team and this is what we do and we're air raid guys and that's what we believe in. And that really hasn't been the case this year. They're running the ball a heck of a lot more with Avery Morrow. Number 25 is kind of their bell cow. I don't remember what he put up against Air Force, but I know he cracked 100 yards in that game as well too. My understanding from what I've read into that is that is in the sense that they want to, I believe it was Norvell himself who said, like, we want to give our defense more of a rest than we have in previous seasons. Like, that's how we're addressing that. And we want to bring in that run game full, then make it more of an emphasis than it had previously been under Norvell and all that too. With all that in mind, Bronco said, when I'm looking at their offense, I'm thinking it's a pro-style offense instead of like a true air raid and all that too. And I kind of asked him to elaborate a little bit more on that too. And he's like, when you're looking at this team, you're not thinking it's a traditional air raid team. It's just more of a pro-style thing. And they're doing a nice job with the development of the run game too. And they still have dynamic receivers, still have a good quarterback. It's just not quite what it was in that sense too. So I thought it was interesting, that kind of perception of Colorado State. As we talked about on previous shows too, Bronco limits the amount of time that he spends talking about upcoming opponents and all that and what they do. He is not the type of coach to say, look at this team, man. I mean, they got stud receivers, they got a great offensive line, all that. He keeps it pretty limited on that front. And says that, he keeps it limited when he's talking to the team too. He likes to keep the focus on themselves. And it very much for, the 3-game win streak and how dramatic Saturday was and, where the fact that the program is kind of in a spot that it just has not been in, really some time in terms of excitement and kind of having some life at this point in the season to maybe make a bowl. We'll see if that actually happens. And kind of definitely some gettable games down the stretch. I think the number one takeaway from the press conference today, at least on my end, was just that it was just normal. And it was just, we're going to continue to keep working. And there's still things that we have to figure out. Defensively, he said that he saw progress on Saturday when he went back and watched the game. Just in terms of the consistency from play to play, playing that many snaps, I think they cracked 85 defensive snaps, which is a ton of defensive snaps. And I think the UNM played 78 offensive snaps too. So that's easily the highest snap count of the season on both teams and all that too combined. He said he liked the consistency he saw on a play-to-play basis. I think I mostly agree on that note too. I thought going back and watching the game, I think one of the things I took away was that the tackling was pretty good. I think the tackling's been pretty good from this defense for the past couple weeks. So he did think he saw improvement there. It's interesting in the sense that, the last 3 games that UNM has played, they have given up, season highs and points and yards and all that to opponents, and some of them, New Mexico State Air Force in particular, those are offense that struggled in multiple regards and all that, and they still found ways to get things going and all that. But at the same time, too, there's kind of different cases there. I mean, in New Mexico State Air Force's cases, those were 20-point fourth quarters. In Utah State's case, they led the entirety of the game, and they had a really pretty good offensive game plan, in my opinion, in terms of attacking UNM's defense. And obviously really talented players like Jalen Royals, Razul Faizan. Kind of surprised me. Mendenhall said he thought Faizan was the best running back they faced all year, which is kind of interesting to phase out. But at the same time, they closed it with 2 massive defensive plays. So the 4th and 1 stop and Demetri Johnson's pick with a little over a minute left. So
they haven't had many interceptions all year, so the interception was really big. But that 4th down stop, that to me is going to go down. However, this season ends, that 4th down stop's really the one that's going to impress me and kind of stick with me, because interceptions generally do come and go. That one timing wise is what sealed the game. But
you can never bank on takeaways, but you can. I mean, if you can do it, you can maybe bank on. Hey, well, we can maybe stop them in a short yardage situation here.
Yeah,
and that's I think you're 100% right. I mean, it's huge, and if things get hairy down the stretch with UNM kind of launching themselves deeper into the conversation for a bowl and maybe something more beyond that, but let's probably pump the brakes on that for a little bit too. And I think you can.
No pumping brakes. What beyond that? What are you talking about?
I don't. I mean,
Like a better than just
a top 5, top 4 conference finish. Let's say that a top 5, top 4 conference finish, not a 1 or 2, but a top 5.
Like opponents, not worth comparing, but I'm gonna compare them anyway because that is what we can do. Colorado State did just play.
I will pause. Yeah. And Bronco said the like opponents. That's okay. He said that in the press conference that those comparisons are fine in terms of that.
Well, I'll disagree with him. I'm about to compare the two games. In some ways. I'm about to compare the two games. So, like, obviously, I believe in it somewhat, but different games have such different personalities and take on different things. So, like, just looking at box scores, you can look at tendencies and stuff, and he's looking at it far more than just a box score recap like I'm about to give. But for what it's worth, Colorado State did play Air Force this past weekend. It is a rivalry game for them. They did win 21-13.
First rivalry win there in
a decade, right?
Like 2002, I think, is the first time.
20 some years.
Yeah.
So yeah, in-state rivalry, a couple hours apart, and it was a game in some regards similar to when New Mexico beat Air Force, in that they were up a little bit, and then Air Force kind of came back to make the final score look okay. CSU was up 21-0 in this game. Air Force tacked on both of its touchdowns late. It did fail in a point after try on one of those in the fourth quarter. But if you're just comparing some stats between New Mexico's win over Air Force, which was a largely, in my opinion, dominant win, you're looking at things like first downs. Air Force and UNM both had 21 when they played each other. CSU managed just 15 first downs against Air Force. If you're looking at total yards, UNM had 434 total yards. Colorado State did have 406. They passed for 201 and rushed for 205, whereas New Mexico passed for 179 and rushed for 255. UNM's clearly offensively had the edge over CSU. I guess it wasn't a dominant edge in any stretch other than points. And I guess defensively, CSU, you could say, played better since they held them to 13 points and UNM did not. So I don't think you can look into those stats and read a whole lot just because of the way the two games played out. UNM had control of the game, and then Air Force kind of came back, made it look a little closer than it was, but it was still a double-digit win for the Lobos. Well, I forget what was the final for the Air Force game.
52-37.
52-37. Colorado State up 21-0. Then in the fourth quarter, Air Force tacks on 2 touchdowns to make the final score 21-13. So in terms of those like opponents, the recent like opponent of Air Force, I'd say maybe UNM looked better against Air Force a little bit, but nothing that I think you can gain too much confidence in. The fact that this is a road game makes Colorado State a clear and easy choice as a favorite. I will ask you, because I'll spill the beans and say I was surprised it was a full touchdown point spread when I saw it today. I did expect 5 or 6 points, but I didn't think it'd get up to a full touchdown. But Colorado State is favored by 7 right now. What do you think about that opening line?
I thought 5 or 6. I think that was kind of the range I was thinking. 5 or 6 seemed completely fair. I never thought UNM was going to be favored in this game. 5 or 6 fair, and I think a full touchdown is fair in this spot too. I think we've got
Torrey Horton.
What's up?
No Horton at receiver.
Yeah, but I mean they're slotting in Winfield and all that too, and that's looking good. Like it feels like, and we talked a little bit about this on Saturday, but actually going back and being able to watch, not all of it, but definitely a good chunk of it, the Air Force Colorado State game too, and with that San Jose State game. Was that 21? Oh my gosh, no, it wasn't 21. It was 34-24, 27. That game, the San Jose State game that Colorado State played, something like that.
I'll pull it up. Hold on.
Yeah, it feels like I said it last week on this Monday show. I was last week or 2 weeks ago, like in the offseason, I started buying all this Colorado State stock and
31-24 San Jose State.
31-24. Thank you. So I had the 4 off all that. Excuse me. Offseason, I bought a lot of Colorado State stock. I thought this was going to be kind of the big turning year and all that for the Jay Norvell era. And they start the season. They get mollywopped by Texas. I guess that's fine in some ways, but they just looked lifeless against Texas, which was concerning. kind of had to eke out a lot of different things. The offense was kind of in a weird spot as they were developing the run game and making it, kind of the way that they would like it. And finding the things that worked for them too. Pass game wasn't great. Fowler Nicolosi was turning the ball over a good deal. Just was not in a good spot. And I'm holding on this Ram stock. And now all of a sudden, after the last 2 games, I kind of feel better about this Colorado State team. I think this definitely is a team that I don't think they'll compete for a Mountain West championship, but I do think they're going to make a bowl. And I was thinking about this last night too. Like we're 7 games in this season for New Mexico, 5 games left. Colorado State, Wyoming, San Diego State, Washington State, Hawaii, remaining opponents. Who do you think at the end of the year when all the records are in, finalized and stats and everything? Who do you think is the best team that UNM will have played this year? And this isn't a counting exercise. It doesn't have to be just based on record.
I'm still optimistic Arizona can look good by the end of the year. So maybe Arizona, Washington State's getting votes. So Arizona, why not Arizona? Maybe Washington State. I don't think it's going to be Colorado State.
I think Washington State has the edge right now. I think Washington State is kind of in that one spot at the moment. Washington State, that tier 2, that second tier, I think it's Arizona and Montana State. I think that's
Fresno State. How far off are they?
I think in that tier 3, it's Fresno, Auburn, and Colorado State.
Okay.
I think that's kind of there. San Diego State, we'll see what happens with them. I think they could maybe play their way. I think they can maybe play their way up, but
well, I'll say this about Colorado State, and look, people that had known for 13 years me covering Lobo basketball. I've never been really high on Lobo football because they haven't been great. I wasn't a huge fan of the Bob Davie era for a variety of reasons. Even when they were getting to bowl games, we weren't doing a show like this during the Bob Davie era, so I wasn't talking about the team every week. So this is kind of new ground for me, new area for me to be.
Yourself.
What's that?
You're just in the office talking to yourself.
Yeah, you just walking around town, kind of mumbling to myself. But I've never really been kind of singing the praises of Lobo football like I have this year because I know what they've been through. I can see the progress on the field, and I can see the mindset that these players and coaches all sort of have. But they are 3-4. There's some context there. I'll say this about Colorado State, and you're buying stock in them and kind of approaching this as a.
Well, I'm not buying more stock. I have.
No, you're not buying more stock. You were.
I talked to the broker. I couldn't get rid of it, and I'm just holding it to the end of the season. Like, it is what it is.
You bought stock coming in.
Yes.
I will point out some of the things that I think are worth really being critical of Jay Norvell and Colorado State football right now.
Mm-hmm.
He gets paid $1.8 million a year in a league where coaches aren't getting paid, $2 million a year. He might be. Is he the highest? Who's the highest paid coach in the Mountain West right now? I think it's Jay Norvell and his staff.
It might be Norvell. Did Odom ever get a bump?
He deserves one because he's actually done something. Jay Norvell hasn't done anything. Jay Norvell and his staff got plucked in an arrogant way from Nevada, and they took the whole staff and recruiting class. They talked a big game when playing Colorado 2 years in a row and lost both times to their rival, even when Colorado was pretty bad last year. They talked a huge game around Colorado State football, and they haven't been very good. They have a great stadium. They're going to the Pac-12 because of their investment. But, man, that investment hasn't bought them any football success that's really worth thumping your chest about yet. But you wouldn't know that based on talking to people around that program. If UNM had any sense of a coach that arrogant, or a coaching staff, or even a fan base that arrogant, for doing what they've done, getting paid what they've got paid, getting plucked from another Mountain West rival school and taking the whole staff and recruits with you, you know how much crap everybody here in Albuquerque would be giving them. And yet for some reason in Fort Collins, I don't say this about other places around the Mountain West very often, but there's a whole lot of Kool-Aid being consumed up there in Fort Collins about a Colorado State team that has yet to do anything. I think they win this week, by the way. I think they beat the Lobos. But they're supposed to. If you can't beat a 3-4 Lobo team with the highest paid coaching staff and coach in the league and all the investment you've put in, I don't quite understand why there is not a whole lot more criticism of the Colorado State football team. In a vacuum, this is a 1-week game. They're the better team in my mind. I think they're going to win. The big picture, I don't understand the coverage of Colorado State football and why there's still so much leniency being given to them.
I can't even like match exactly like where you're coming from, because you've just been around the league way longer than I have. And like, I have not, I can't even. And Jay Norvell has always been nice to me when I've talked to him. So
He's a nice enough guy. Yeah.
Nice enough guy. Sure. And it really like one of the most fascinating coaching careers, like in terms of like coaching, like trees and all that, and maybe in all of football, like just all over the place. Really fascinating. At the same time, I do think Colorado State does win this week too. But I don't think it's going to be a particularly assertive win by any stretch of the imagination. So number one, Jay Norvell, Sean Lewis. Yeah, I didn't even think of, because he did get a pretty nice deal too, actually. And then Odom. Okay. Yeah, I think Colorado State does win. That's my gut check right now. I don't think it's a particularly assertive win by any stretch of the imagination. But they're doing some nice things. And it does look like they're turning a corner at this point as well too. I don't know. I mean, I'm fascinated to see the stadium. I'm fascinated to see the fan base and how that all plays out as well too. Should be interesting. I will say this does feel. We'll have a podcast kind of covering the Colorado State perspective heading into this game, as we do every single week and all that too.
Who do you have?
Similar to Utah. Say it again.
Who's on your show?
What's up?
Who's your guest on your podcast?
I have not picked a guest yet. We do have options though. I will say it does feel from my end, the way I'm looking at this does feel like a pretty high leverage, kind of a big game for Colorado State in a way that I don't think anybody else is looking at it that at this point in the season, when they're kind of looking at the schedule in the offseason and all that too. Utah State, it was really clear, like, if they want to do anything, you kind of have to beat New Mexico. This game in particular, I mean, I think Colorado State can still do things down the stretch, but I mean, if you want to be where you want to be, and you want to be in a bowl, and you want to start living up on some of the promises of that the investment has led up, and how Norvell has spoken about the program and all that too, this definitely seems like a little bit of a must-win game. I was looking into it, so UNM is on a 12-game losing streak to Colorado State.
It's insane when you look at their past decade, how similar they are, except against each other.
But when the last time they beat Colorado State? Do you know when that was?
I mean, they weren't playing every year. So if you're telling me it's 12 games, it's got to be, 15, 16 years ago?
It was November 21st, 2009. The one win of the first season of the Mike Locksley era. That was in Albuquerque. The one win that they got.
Locksley era reference. Wow.
Talk about that. That's crazy. And they haven't beaten Fort Collins they haven't beaten Colorado State in Fort Collins since 2006. So I don't know. It is a perplexing streak in a lot of ways, like going back through it, because UNM has been on. I asked Brock a little bit about this today too. And he flat out said he doesn't care about it. He's not cognizant of it. And why would he? New Mexico State, you snap a 2-game losing streak too. Air Force, you snap a 5-game losing streak too. Utah State, you snap a 7-game losing streak too. That one was also a little bit perplexing too. The fact that Utah State had won as many in a row over New Mexico as the same as
they've been so up and down. They've had really good years, but then they've had really off years, and they seem to kind of bounce up and down. You think you would have picked them off in one of those downward trends.
It seems like the floor for that program is kind of beating New Mexico, and now they are below the floor at this point. That is where they are, and it's a cursed season. And I kind of do feel for some of the players and coaches over there right now, because it's a good offense, and it's a talented defense, but it just hasn't meshed. And it was a tough schedule to start. I don't know if Blake Anderson was still the head coach, that the record would be all that different, to be honest with you. I don't think they would have picked off USC. I don't think they would have picked off Utah or Boise or UNLV. They probably should have beaten Temple. They definitely should have beaten Temple. But, yeah, I don't know. It's some interesting dynamics going into this game with the streak, where UNM is with this kind of budding momentum. I'll ask another question for you too. you've been around the program longer than I have, and I would love if anybody had any comments about this too in the in the chat as well. When do you think you felt this kind of vibe around New Mexico football? When's the last time you kind of remember this?
I would say it's a little different there, again, context, right?
Yeah.
When they won back-to-back games at the end of the COVID year and went through stuff that nobody else went through, they relocated their entire football program to a hotel in Las Vegas in another state. That was I think the vibe coming off of that COVID year, winning the final 2 games, and that being Danny Gonzalez's first year, I think there was a similar vibe to right now. But because it kind of had to last a whole off season, it was the end of one season, then the start of a new.
They won their first 2 games in 2021, so they had a 4-game win streak between 2 seasons.
It had to have been that kind of feel right then. But again, because there were 2 stories being told, there was a story of one season that ended with a couple wins, and then the start of another story that was just started with 2 wins. But remind me, I mean, who were they against? One was FCS.
It was like Houston Baptist and New Mexico State, I think, the first 2.
So while there was excitement,
that was end of the Doug Martin era, New Mexico State.
Yeah, I think that was probably the closest. During the Bob Davie era, again, I'm not trying to necessarily discredit the Bob Davie era. They went to 2 bowls. But I don't recall there being a whole, maybe because they struggled and then slowly kind of built their way up. I don't recall the vibe around the Bob Davie bowl teams, even as just sort of upbeat and positive as this. People were excited, of course. They're winning and they're going to bowl games. So maybe the back-to-back bowl seasons of Bob Davie were similar, but there was a different vibe around the program in general. There wasn't a, man, we just love this guy and this staff feel that is going on right now for Bronco and his staff. And I think the kumbaya just love of everything going on with Lobo football right now is pretty unique. Most similar to maybe the start of that second Danny Gonzalez season, because it came off of 2 wins at the beginning of the year before and started with 2 wins. I'm thinking it was along those lines. We do have a comment here. Juan Beza saying, last time I was this excited, I was still in high school and Lamar Jordan was the truth. No joke, by the way. Lamar Jordan probably in the conversation, just the Lobo football conversation space, probably still doesn't get enough pub. He was pretty damn good. Anyway, last time I was this excited, I was still in high school. Lamar Jordan was the truth. They would have beat Arizona in the New Mexico Bowl if he doesn't get hurt. Great game. They went band for band. I will say that, yeah, look, some people had a different feel of the Bob Davie era than I did. So maybe some people felt it then too. So I'd say those are the 2 points in the last, at least certainly since the Rocky Long era, that people felt anything close to what they're feeling right now about Lobo football.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the kind of the kumbaya and all the good vibes too. I don't know. I mean, like, and you can definitely, we kind of touched on this. You talking about, different perceptions of the Bob Davie era too, and all that too. I don't know if I've ever been around a program where it is just this kind of universal good vibes around one guy in particular with Bronco Mendenhall, and that's just beyond. That's just frankly beyond, the New Mexico fan base too. I mean, the videos I put out from the post-game press conference and all that too, it was BYU people, it was Oregon State people, it was everybody. Love this guy, love what he's doing there, yada, yada, yada. Utah State fans, I saw some chatter on Twitter. They're like, man, if we could get him after the season, like, we might be in a good spot.
It is funny. We're in a world where that kind of happens. Just social media and openness of fans to talk. But I've seen other fan bases in this league talk about getting Devin Dampier as their quarterback next year. You're talking about fan bases talking about, man, if Bronco could be our coach next year, how great would that be? That's unique in the history of college football, really. Talk like that just so openly after a game or during a season, where you're talking about, man, if we can get that player or that coach next year on our team. So anyway.
Yeah, and I know Danny was well liked around the league in a lot of respects too. I don't know how many times there were different fan bases like, man, if we could just get Danny as our head coach, or man, if we could just get Bob Davie in and stuff like that too. And maybe I don't know if there were Mountain West fans that felt that way about Rocky at any point. They did not feel that way about Locks. I feel safe about saying that, but yeah.
Jimmy H on YouTube saying Davey was an outsider and the fans knew it. Without dedicating a whole show to the Bob Davie era and Bob Davie, he did have some, I'll call them missteps. I mean, they had some trouble around the program a couple times that I don't think were handled well by him or the staff. He had a couple missteps that people probably could around the program probably could have helped them out with a little bit. He called Milne Stadium, which is all of less than 1 mile from him, and he'd coached there for how many years, and late in his career made a comment about Milner Stadium that I just remember thinking, this guy has lived in Albuquerque, or coached in, I shouldn't say lived in Albuquerque. He didn't all off season. He lived back home in Arizona a lot too, but to mispronounce the high school stadium that you can see the lights from your office, caddy corner across the street. He never seemed to embrace the community. I don't know that Bronco is necessarily.
That's kind of what I wanted to say. Like, I mean, you can definitely say that Bronco is an outsider in certain respects.
Well, Danny did the community thing the way more so than any coach has ever done the community thing and buying in. He is the community. He is from Albuquerque. Bronco hasn't necessarily done that either, but Bronco also hasn't reminded people how lucky they should feel that he's here.
No.
I feel Bob Davie did that, whether intentional or not. I do think there was a little bit of the schematics, and we talk about the schematics, and I know the schematics, and I think there was a talking down to feeling, again, whether it's true or not. New Mexicans tend to get that way. I am a born and raised New Mexican, and I see it sometimes. I think I think there was a vibe around Bob Davie that we were always being spoken to, and not in a conversation with. And that's what you want from a fan base, right? You want to feel like you're a part of it, and not just that like somebody's doing you a big favor by even being here. And I think that's what they felt. One more comment from Jimmy H on YouTube is Broncos one of us, and the fans know it. He had been here before. This is not taking a shot at Bronco. Bronco, in a lot of ways, hasn't done a whole lot different in terms of getting out in the community than most coaches have done. But what Bronco's done has been genuine at every press conference, said a very singular leadership kind of message that when you start to see it pay off, and then you can see the genuine emotion after the game when he has some tears coming down. He's getting a little choked up in a post-game TV presser, and then in the videos you were sharing in your interview in Logan, it's hard not to buy in or start to feel kind of a little bit of an attachment when you're watching the growth. It's like watching a child grow. I got two of them, and by the way, one of them is turning 15 today. Happy birthday to Jaden, my 15-year-old daughter, who is home from school today because I digress. She was in urgent care until 3 a.m. this morning with some stuff, but she'll be fine and back at it tomorrow. So she spent the start of her 15th birthday in urgent care until 3 a.m. this morning. But when you watch a child grow and you're watching a football team grow, and you talk about, oh, one day they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and then you see it happen, you get all choked up and you have all the feels. That's what you're feeling with this Lobo football team, man. You could see it when they were 0-4. You could see what was coming down the road. And then for it to happen, that's why people are just in love. And like I said, kumbaya kind of vibe going with Bronco right now in this team. So,
yeah, on the note of like, he's we can definitely change conversations after this. But on the note of like, he's one of us. Like, I don't even know if that's something that he cares to really communicate. He's just very much his own guy and just very much comfortable in who he is. And if that means he's crying in a post-game press conference, or he's giving us 2-word answers in a Monday press conference or whatever, like that's who he is. And I think that's I think that's why he's kind of cultivated a certain level of respect amongst fans and the media and all that too. It's just that, hey, you know what you're gonna get 99.9% of the time. And
favorite weekly topic: injuries. Do we know any more about injuries? And I know he just gets long-winded and goes crazy, and his gift of gab gets going crazy about injuries. Tell us what he said about injuries and what you may or may not know about injuries going into the Colorado State game.
You gave us a more extensive injury report on your own daughter than anything that he gave us today. I think that, look, okay, so they were missing to start the game, they were missing Gabe Lopez. I'm talking about Utah State. To start the game, they were missing Gabe Lopez, missed his third straight game. I don't know if the injury is there. He didn't practice last week from everything that I'm aware of. Tyler Keeney did return. He didn't play a ton. He did have a big pass deflection, though, against Utah State. So it seems like he's kind of rounding back into being more healthy. They were missing Bobby Arnold after he suffered that undisclosed injury. I'm just not going to say undisclosed the rest. They're all undisclosed. I don't know what any of them are. Suffered an injury against Air Force. And then Nakari Rogers, kind of the hammer in UNM's run game and all that. He suffered an injury, did not play in the second half. And Caleb Medford suffered an injury, did not play in the second half. Cam Watts, who has dealt with injuries this season, he suffered an injury, did not play in the second half. I asked about Nakari and Caleb in particular. Is there an update on the timeline? And are they expecting to get him back? And there was no indication. There was no answer. So normal in that sense. But those are kind of the names you need to watch for. I will write a story after practice tomorrow in the 30-minute window of availability that we get. And I will keep I always write about injuries at the end of all those stories, and I will keep an eye and see them there. I am curious if they do, and I'll note this too. Like, it's not like Bronco, if it's a season-ending injury, he finally comes out and says like, oh yeah, so and so is gone. The UNM has had 2 season-ending injuries on the offensive line: Jawan Singletary and Tevin Shaw. Not a word from him. Frankly, this is not me being critical or anything like that. This is the way it was. I was told about those injuries through the offensive coordinator, Jason Beck. So I'm very curious what the extent of the Medford and Rogers injuries are in particular. And because I do think if you're missing Rogers for an extended period, I think that's going to change some things for you, maybe not in a major way. And I think if you're missing Medford for a while, I think that does certainly change some things too, in terms of how teams are game planning you on the outside as well too. I know it hasn't been a really loud season for Caleb Medford, but I still think he's, he has come up in some pretty good moments to help UNM out. And I don't know. So I think those are kind of the 2 you really want to look for. Bobby Arnold, I think, is another one for sure. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at on the injuries front.
Did Frank Mercogliano? Let me set the over/under at 1.5 mentions of his salsa dance. I'll say over.
Geoff at the end of the press conference asked if Bronco had seen it. Bronco said he is something that he said before, where he is probably the least tuned in head coach in the entire country. He did not see Frank's dance. It was kind of a funny moment. Frank was standing in the front of the room just a little bit awkwardly as this question was being answered. No, he has not seen it. And I don't know. I don't know if he will have seen it. So I also I asked about just a kind of a random note here. I did ask Bronco about Tony Bennett stepping down. I was curious if he had anything to say about that. Tony Bennett, the former Virginia, the now former, which feels crazy to say, Virginia basketball head coach, won a national title there. A lot of good teams over the years in the ACC and all that too. Bronco, his entire tenure at Virginia, Tony Bennett was there as well. Bronco spoke just glowingly about him, said he doesn't think that there's, college athletics is going to get another guy like Tony Bennett, pretty much ever. And I think that's maybe, I think there's some merit to that statement too, just in terms of, how Tony approached things and, how similar it is to how Bronco kind of approaches things too. So, yeah.
Both are certainly not over the top with it, but unapologetic and not shy to admit that they are very much faith-based coaches in 2 different faiths, but faith-based coaches and bring that into their coaching and their conversations with as they would say, with the young men that they teach and mentor and coach. But yeah, with the athletes, but not over the top with it. They're not at the podium on a weekly press conference talking about their faith. But if anybody wanted to talk to you about it, if anybody asked them about it, they wouldn't back down from it either.
I don't think it's even and I think that's a good point. I don't even think of it in a faith element. I think they're very much guys that just, we're going to keep the main thing the main thing. I'm not going to come into the locker room with all this bulletin board material and tell you, man, look at how much they don't like you, or look at what they said. It's just very much like, we're going to play to the high, to our highest level and our highest abilities and all that, because like that's just what we want to do.
All right, I'm going to go through a couple of these comments. I got one off of Twitter, too, that didn't show up in our feed here that I'm going to have to pull in as a separate slide. Jimmy H, one more time from YouTube, talking about Bronco again. Bronco's not a city slicker, nor does he pretend to be the CEO of the team. He is completely relatable. I agree with that. He is a relatable or certainly likable, I suppose, CEO. He doesn't come across as the CEO. He is the leader of this program, though, and does it in a way that isn't off-putting. I think that's fair to say. I'll bring in Juan's comment again from YouTube. Not again, another comment from Juan Beza. Hey, Sean, any word on why they switched more to a three-man front for this one? I thought that was interesting. Looked like a 3-3-5 or the 3-3-5 again, which has been well known in these parts through the years. So any word on a big change defensively and kind of what they were doing?
I didn't ask a schematic question. What I will say, my impression in a lot of different ways, is that the kind of base that they're running right now, it is basically kind of a 3-3 stack anyways. Like it sort of is that in some regards, honestly. In terms of how they kind of label personnel and stuff like that, where, Gabe Lopez or Antonio Harris Jr., they're edge rushers, but they're being treated as, outside linebackers, weak side, will guys and stuff like that. They're just lined up in that spot. So to me, it really, after a lot of consternation and awkward questions in the offseason about, are you going to run a 3-3-5? Are you going to run a 4-2-5? Are you going to run a 3-4? What are you going to do here? It seems like they've kind of settled into this 3-3 stack base throughout the season and haven't deviated a ton. And there was some shifting there in terms of that. I didn't ask a schematic question, honestly, and I think that's a good catch there too. But really the way that I've kind of approached this defense is that it basically is a 3-3-5. And what'd you just do? Did you just drop something?
Nope, I just screenshotted something that I'm going to pull onto the screen in just a moment.
I feel like I know what you just screenshotted. Maybe.
No, I don't think you do.
I think so now I definitely know what it is. Good question from Juan. Jimmy, it's weird. I hate the CEO term for coaches. I think it's so silly. And I think it like no crap. Like, you're obviously the CEO. Like, it's somewhat what are you talking about?
You're the CEO. You run the program.
No, that's what I'm saying. Look, like when Ryan Day comes out, he's like, I'm taking more of a CEO approach.
Oh,
well, yeah, like you already basically were the CEO. Like,
yeah, well, it doesn't matter what approach you take. You are that anyway.
Exactly. And I think I think the thing is, I don't think he doesn't pretend to not be the CEO of the team. Like, literally, I didn't pull a lot of these comments, but I mean, I know I asked him kind of about, halftime at Utah State and all that too, and what that was like. And it was a very similar answer to a lot of the stuff that he's talked about in the past, where he's like, I'm not trying to get an offensive coordinator Jason Beck's way. I'm talking to defensive coordinator Nick Howell a little bit, but at halftime, I'm really just kind of standing back and just letting those guys go in and coach and do what they got to do. Position coaches doing what they got to do. Yeah, that's just kind of, I think that is indicative of a CEO approach. Like, you put people in place to do jobs and all that. It's just, I think it gets annoying for people when it is a Ryan Day or a Derek Dooley or whoever, where it's like, yeah, I'm trying to be more of a CEO. Like, I'm not going to have a deep hand in the offense and all that. I'm not going to have a big hand in the defense and stuff like that too. So yeah, that's my rant on CEOs and how they translate to coaching.
I'm going to shift now to some schedule type questions. I guess to start off, I want to pull up their schedule. Let's look at their schedule first, because I have some comments on the schedule that, are certainly worth remembering, I think, in terms of just sort of where the Lobos are. This is a team. Let me pull this little note off the screen there so you can see a little bit more of their schedule. This is a team in a 12-game schedule, only has 5 home games. Yes, they had 3 byes, but only one of them really laid out in a good spot, which was before the Air Force game. You guys spoke about that. Go ahead.
I'll say the final spot, if they're in a very interesting position, could end up being pretty beneficial. But they have to play their way into that spot. So
yeah, that's fair. Except, well, I'll make a comment on that one. If you go through their schedule, they had the home opener on August 24th in week 0. They did not play another home game until September 21st, which is game 4, as everybody knows because you've been following the team to this point so far. But then away home 2 weeks ago now against Air Force. 2 weeks on the road, then you're back home for 1. There's not even a 2-game homestand anywhere on the schedule. It is not a great schedule for any team to have 7 on the road and 5 at home. And they're still in a good spot. Again, this leads to maybe me not thinking they're going to get to 6 wins in bowl eligibility. But obviously with the caveat that they're in a position right now where they can get to 6 wins in bowl eligibility, which is amazing.
In position, yeah.
They're in position to be in position. And you're saying that their bye, which is right in this region here between San Diego State and Washington State, if they are 1 win away and they get the bye right there, it looks like actually so that's a 12-game spot, and then they have the bye before Hawaii. So the bye before Hawaii is good. If
that's what I think. If you're in a spot where it's you got to win against Hawaii and all that extra week to game plan and get healthy and all that, because I don't think these injuries are going to stop down the stretch. Yeah, that could end up being enormous.
This is a weird kind of month of November. I mean, 6 days between Wyoming and San Diego State, and then 12 days between. Why do I keep saying 12? It's 8 days. It's got Aggie math in my mind. Forget what I was saying about the bye before Washington State, but then you got the 2 weeks. I digress. It's a bad schedule overall for a team, but you're right. If they are 1 win away from bowl eligibility and they get 2 weeks to prepare for Hawaii and get healthy, that's a really good spot for a third bye. Most teams don't have 3 byes, obviously.
Exactly, and I think it just adds further credence to if they are in position. I've written about this and spoken about it a little bit on the show too. Bronco has said he was pretty skeptical and was kind of skewing the idea of having 3 bye weeks. He's pretty skeptical of that in the offseason and didn't know how he was totally going to manage it and didn't know if he quite liked it. And I think now with the injuries that they kind of suffered and where they kind of are, keeping momentum after that second bye, and maybe it'll keep up going. We'll see what happens. I think that third bye will be pretty well liked.
Tricky spot though in where they are too. Say they're at 5 wins after Wyoming. They go to San Diego State and lose. They lose at home to Washington State. You're looking November 2nd to the November 30th with potentially 2 losses, potentially 28 days basically before one final game. If you are out of bowl contention at that point and you're only at 4 wins and that Hawaii game is only for win number 5, I have a feeling this team will still get up for it, but that's not a spot that a lot of teams would get up for with essentially without anything on the line. But you're right. There's potential for good there. I say all that because we also have a comment that came from a reader on Twitter that was not here in our feed, but let's see, what is this commie fan? Where that is. Assuming Lobos beat Hawaii and Wyoming, can they get a win? Can they beat Colorado State or San Diego State to get to bowl eligibility? That's sort of what we're dancing around a little bit.
I think they can. Okay, I think they can beat San Diego State. I think that's definitely a winnable game.
Well, Colorado State's a winnable game too.
I think Colorado State's a winnable game. I mean,
I don't think we're predicting it. I know I'm not predicting it.
Yeah, so it's like it's like when you're in the 4th grade or whatever, and it's like can I use the bathroom? Well, obviously you can use the bathroom. May I use the bathroom? It's can or will is kind of the difference here. Can they? Yes. Will they? Let's see. We'll figure that out.
Well, you cover the team. I won't put you on the spot, but I'm scrolling down their schedule. and I see Colorado State, Wyoming, San Diego State, Washington State, and Hawaii. I'll tell you this. I think they beat Wyoming. I think they beat Hawaii.
I think look, I'm going to be honest. I also loaded up on a lot of Rainbow Warriors stock in the offseason too.
They played pretty well against Boise State. They played better than that score looked against Boise State for 3 quarters.
I think Hawaii. I think Hawaii is like, it's weird. Like, the record is not like you're not running out and being like, man, what a great team. And I don't even care that they played UCLA tight, honestly. Like, it really, like, UCLA is pretty stinky at this point. I was not expecting Sam Houston State to kind of do what they did against them as well too. That seemed a little bit like a step back too. But I kind of think Hawaii could be an interesting spot down the stretch here too, where that game we're definitely.
Yeah, it could mean something for them, and we'll see how that plays, right? I mean, when stuff's on the line, people
it's tough to go play on the island. It just straight up is. It's difficult to do that. So yeah.
As we sort of wind down this show, anything else? I do want to bring up some Devin Dampier stuff here in just a second. Anything else about either last week's game, the big win, or this week's game before I kind of bring up some individual accolades? I know we already mentioned some of it, but I do want to single it out because it's the first time it's happened all season. Anything else about this weekend's game or the Utah State win that you want to talk about?
One thing in particular that I was curious about, and I've been curious about, and I've written about it. Jaden Wilson, linebacker, just has not played a lot. The last 2 games or so. At first, I thought it was an injury, and I asked Bronco about it in the context of an injury, and he just said no, he'll be back. And he practiced last week, and he played a little defensively against Utah State, not a ton. For me, it's. The question there is kind of, you have Dimitri Johnson and Randolph Kapai playing basically every single defensive snap and a lot of defensive snaps on Saturday. Why is there not a lot of rotating and all that? And the kind of response I got from Bronco on that note was more or less those guys are kind of developing the middle, and they're developing into a pretty all right tandem, and we're just going to kind of keep riding it. So I don't know. That's something that was interesting to me. In terms of wrapping up the Utah State game.
Look, the individual performances there were a few tremendous ones. Obviously, Luke Weissong gets the post-game salsa dance with the TNT crew. Luke Weissong's numbers are just unbelievable, and Bronco said it after the game. This is his program. Bronco's just lucky to coach it. Luke's been doing it all year, and we got to keep kind of singing his praises. And then Devin Dampier. Man, I'm sitting there trying hard not to do it too.
I'll have you recollect on Luke too, a little bit more on Luke too. I think we covered this on Saturday, but yeah, he very much has the opportunity to become UNM's first 1,000-yard receiver since 2007. He won't threaten unless something really crazy happens. He won't threaten like the all-time single-season receptions record, but he'll definitely. I think. I don't want to say definitely, because then you got to think about injuries and all that too. He misses a game, whatever. At the same time, he's definitely going to be. He's kind of carving out a top 10 receiving season in UNM history at this point. Still kind of has to keep it up, and this Utah State game was kind of I don't want to say breakthrough, but a little bit of a bounce back after 2 kind of slower games where he's getting more defensive attention. But with that being said, Offensive Player of the Week, Devin Dampier. He was the Mountain West leader in total offense heading into Saturday's game, and he is very much still the Mountain West leader in total offense. I mentioned that to him on Saturday, and he said, I didn't even know that. I didn't realize that. So it seemed like he got a little bit of a kick out of that too.
Do you believe that?
I believe that, yeah, from Devin. Yeah, I do.
Okay. I'm not.
I do.
I don't know the answers. I don't know Devin well enough. I've talked to players before who say they don't know.
Quarterbacks. To be honest, I don't know what quarterbacks are looking at like individual total offense. Like I think they're looking at like touchdowns, interceptions, yards thrown, rushing yards. I don't know if they're looking like, it's.
No, it might be totally accurate. I know I've covered enough basketball players that tell me they don't care about stats, but know their stats on any given moment, any time. So
I buy it right now. But yes. You turn in, 272 passing yards, gosh, was it 2 passing TDs? 2 passing TDs, right?
He had 4 total touchdowns, right? Again,
2 passing TDs, 2 rushing TDs, 105 rushing yards.
he had some interceptions too.
Threw 3 interceptions, definitely, and that was I'll say this, I will admit this right now. I was surprised this morning when I saw that he had been named this, and not quite in the sense of I was like, "Really? That performance? That was good enough?" But because I've just been so conditioned this season to expecting, okay, Ashton Genty. Like I'm not even like thinking like, "Oh, I got to look." But obviously Boise didn't play, but I just didn't have it in my mind. I've been conditioned to Genty. But yeah, I mean, he did throw 3 interceptions. And I think you could honestly look back on Saturday's game and say that the fact that they did turn it over 4 times and still came out with that win is pretty stinking unbelievable in a lot of different regards. I mean, one of those turnovers absolutely should have been a backbreaker, and it just wasn't. So
yeah, agreed. I will. I'm going to add this real quick. Some of the big games this week. There's one big game. The championship before the championship is Friday night. In Las Vegas, Boise State playing at UNLV. This is the, I guess, regular season Mountain West Championship before the Mountain West Championship game. I mean,
the game of the century, Geoff. The game of the century.
It's this week's game of the century, and Boise State is favored by 2.5 at UNLV. A little surprised there. I actually thought it might be 3 or 4, even on the road for Boise State. Not way off, but I didn't think it'd be below a field goal. And it is. I think part of that is maybe in Vegas, you might be getting a lot of action from some of these sports books from some local fans on UNLV. So it might skew a little bit that way. You don't actually see that with basketball. The lines don't necessarily trend or overcorrect because it happens to be a UNLV game. In football, like they're loving this team in Vegas right now. And I thought maybe you'd see some of that. Maybe you are. But anyway, Boise State at UNLV on Friday, 2.5. They got an over-under 65.5. Totals, not really worth talking about a whole lot. But I do mention that one because it's the same total as the UNM +7 at Colorado State, total of 65.5. Last week, I think in some places got up as high as 78.5 in the UNM Utah State game, the over-under, and the total was 95. So it's still easily covered. What I believe I heard or I read was that it is the highest total of the year. The highest over-under set of the year for a college football game was at 78.5, and it was this UNM Utah State game, and it easily covered the over. But Saturday's games for the Mountain West: New Mexico +7 at Colorado State, Utah State +2 at Wyoming. That should tell you maybe something about Wyoming. Wyoming's not having a very good year. If the team that just lost on their home field is within that field goal, that usually the road is roughly a field goal. Anyway, San Jose State +5 at Fresno State. Should be a good game there, actually. I'm curious. I think the loser of that game kind of falls off and out of favor. One of those two teams I think is good, and we'll see. I'll tell you which one I think it is on Saturday. Washington State favored by 14.5 at San Diego State, and Nevada favored by 2.5 at Hawaii. So that's what the Mountain West looks like this week. Anything else you want to talk about the league or anything else?
Do you have a lean towards UNLV Boise State right now? Because the way I'm thinking about this, off of everything I've seen from UNLV, everything I've seen from Boise, I think this game will be more about Maddox Madsen than anything else. I think it will be more. I think this will kind of be if Maddox Madsen is going to get all of the Boise State fans off his back, the people that have, I mean, no offense to these people, but also some offense to these people. The people that have been clamoring for Malachi Nelson and the wings and all that, and said he would start after the Oregon game and all that stuff too. If he's going to get all of them off his back, I think this is going to be the game where he comes out and does it. Because this is a UNLV secondary that kind of gives up. I mean, they do give up a good amount of passing yards too, and I definitely think they're when you're game planning, it's going to be, hey, how do we stop Genty, or how do we figure this out? And
I'm leaning UNLV.
I think I'm leaning Boise right now, but I could talk myself out of it. I know you love the UNLV defense,
I loved them a lot more.
Like they're good, but
I loved them a lot more earlier in the season. But I'm still really impressed by them.
Yeah, I don't. Man, I think I'm leaning Boise right now. I'm very much looking forward to it. Yeah, this should be a tremendous football game. Highly encourage everybody to tune in and watch it. I don't know why I'm really caving for that game right now, but looking forward to it.
Friday night game too. So that'll be good. Obviously, if the Lobos get to bowl eligibility, Sean has to do a salsa dance or else eat a grape.
So I think I'm a salsa dance is fine. You know, that's normal. I do if they do make a bowl game, I think I'll do one fruit. I don't think I'm gonna do both fruits. I'll be honest with you.
Interesting.
I got to keep one fruit that I haven't had in my back pocket. It's just such a good conversation thing. Like it's
so here's the next thing that we need to start approaching is as we get to this big moment of your life where you have a grape or a blueberry. I don't know that A is really the answer. I think I'm not going to ask you to eat
a whole like Trader Joe's
not a whole bushel of grapes or anything like that, or a whole bucket of blueberries.
Is it truly a bushel?
No, I don't know what it is. What is
like a cluster? I don't even know.
But I think if it's a grape,
why would I know?
I think grapes. Maybe we got to talk about like 3 at least, like not just one. I think 3 or 4 would be a good amount. Like I'm not asking you to overdo it, but and blueberries, I think you like they're tiny, man. You got to eat. Let's call it 3 grapes or 5 blueberries.
I'm really not 5 grapes. No, we get
3 grapes or 5 blueberries. It's a tree of grapes. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, if somebody walked into this room right now and like handed me a grape, I'd probably just eat the grape right now. If somebody walked in and handed me a blueberry, I don't think
today's your lucky day. Look out that window.
I don't know. There's something about blueberries that just rub me the wrong way, man. I like it straight up. I'm getting like anxious thinking about it right now. Grapes, not so much. Grapes kind of reached a good comfort level there. I think I'm ready to commit. Blueberries.
Well, you're not making it fun though. We want you to be miserable.
Well, then I think we would do the blueberries, the 5 blueberries instead of the grapes. The grapes I can get to, you know, when I'm sunbathing in Tuscany or something like that. I'll take that. You know, I'll meet the vibe there. Beat that up. But the blueberries, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know. Tricky.
All right. Everybody who watched, everybody who sent in some questions. Saturday, by the way, was one of our best shows after the Utah State game. Obviously, the outcome of the game drives the success of these programs quite a bit. So thank you for all who participated in Saturday's post game. The numbers were great, well over 1,500 yesterday when I looked at it were the views. A lot of people are coming back and watching after the fact. So I appreciate everyone that's doing that. Send in your comments during the show as best you can, and we will try and address them and answer them on the show when we can. So keep following Sean's coverage of this Lobo football team. ABQjournal.com is where you can get all his coverage, my Lobo basketball coverage, James Otis's prep call coverage, everything. Sean, you got your finger up there. What's up?
One last thing, because I usually touch on it. I didn't touch on it. In terms of the depth chart, really no changes whatsoever from Saturday at the least. Nico Bowler is now the backup Buck linebacker. I don't think he didn't play against Utah State, but Bronco indicated that he is kind of a guy that he arrived after spring practice, and they're just kind of seeing more out of him at this point, and they think he's kind of ready. So maybe expect him coming out. And then Javante Royal is also the backup boundary cornerback. Excuse me, a lot of B's there. Royal notably got the first snaps of his UNM career, as I mentioned on Saturday, and all that. Playing one-on-one coverage against Jalen Royals, which is maybe not the most the greatest way to ease somebody in, but that's another guy that's sort of in that mold. The only change to the depth chart right now is just an extra or at the running back spot. It's between Eli Sanders or Nakari Rogers or Javen Jacobs or Soljay Maeva-Peters. Mendenhall mentioned that Javen Jacobs got a little bit banged up against Utah State, so maybe that's something we will look for kind of down the kind of this week during practice and all that. But
any chance that we have a depth chart by the end of the season without a single or on it, or is or going to be a permanent feature on the depth chart?
I appreciate this, I appreciate this setting, the way they've handled this in the sense that they like the oars seem kind of genuine as much as you could maybe say, as opposed to like you get the first depth chart and it's like or like oars everywhere that some programs kind of do. Menelau's kind of said that he doesn't really believe in that. He thinks it's kind of silly. Doesn't think it really adds anything, or it's just kind of lazy gamesmanship in some ways too. I think these are valid oars, but we'll see. I don't think there will be a depth chart at the end where there isn't an oar. Yeah.
Everybody that watched, thanks for watching. We'll sign off with, how about a blueberry muffin, Sean?
I love muffins, but I don't know if I'm ready to commit. I don't know if I'm ready to do it. No.
Sean's having commitment issues. I'm glad you guys are all committed to watching every Monday, every Monday at 2, and then about 45 minutes to an hour after every Lobo football game. I will point out next Monday is a Lobo basketball exhibition game. Don't know how these are gonna kind of churn and evolve into more basketball centric once basketball season starts. If we're gonna how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna have some of these that are gonna be a lot more basketball related as well. So appreciate you guys all for listening. Sean, thanks for being here. Until next time, see you guys. I guess about an hour after Saturday's game in Fort Collins, Sean will be up there.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks.